everyone, this is People and Power, and I'm Summer El-Shahad. On today's program, the Sacred Hills.
Donno sanpatti ଅଛି ସେ କାଇନା ପିନା ସବୁ ଅଛି ଇଟି ପତର ନେଲେ ଆମେ କେମିତି ଗ୍ରୋ ବଚୁ ପତର ତିଲେ ଏକା ଆମକୁ ପିଲା ଜିଲେ କା ଆମେ ବଚି ପାରବୁ ଡଙ୍ଗର ପାହାଡ଼ ସବୁ ବଚି ପାରବୁ ବର୍ଷା ଆସିବ ସେ ପବନ ଆସିବ ଶୀତ ଆସିବ ସବୁ ଚାଷବାସ ହେବ ଏ ପତର ସବୁ କୁ ପାଣି ନେଲେ ଆମେ ମରି ଯିବୁ.
The Niyamgiri hill range in the Indian state of Orissa is a god to the Khond people who live there, a deity providing all their needs. But the hills also contain massive deposits of bauxite or aluminium ore, which Vedanta, a British-based mining corporation, wants to extract. For several years now, supported by an international coalition of NGOs, the Kondh have campaigned hard against Vedanta's plans for the Niyamgiri. The company, in turn, won the backing of the Orissa state authorities. Well, last month, the Khond had something to celebrate when India's Environment Minister, Jairem Ramesh, ruled against the development and criticised Vedanta for violating environment laws. Later, we'll be examining the implications of that decision and asking if it'll stick. But first, as a reminder of the issues involved, here's another chance to see Sapna Bhatia's report for People&Power last year about the Kondh's fight for their sacred lands.
नियमराज है अमर देवी को आम पूजा कर
वेदांत अश्रु सेटा केने देशर अश्रु आसिक आमके मरबार आसीच आ नियमगिरी पहाड़ छाड़ी देला बोले आमे मरी जबो.
The Niyamgiri Hills are many things to many people. To environmentalists, they are an important nature reserve, home to endangered species such as wild elephant, tiger and leopard. To the Kondh people who live here, they are a source of life itself.
सबु हमर पाहापुर सबु बुलिछि हमर डंगर डंगर एबे भी देखे देबी स्वल्प कच्च अछि स्वल्प कच्चर पेट पुरुछि आमे दुमा दुमा हेउछि कोंदा कदली तिले सेट दुमा दुम होइछि.
But the hills are also rich in bauxite, the raw material needed to make aluminium. And that's what brought Vedanta, a British-based mining company, to the Niyamgiri. Vedanta is one of the world's largest mining companies, a giant multinational with over $8 billion in annual revenue and operations in India, Africa and Australia. In 2003, it formed a joint venture with the state government of Orissa to exploit the bauxite deposits in and around Niyamgiri. The deal sparked a David and Goliath battle. On the one side, and indigenous people desperate to save their ancestral lands. On the other, a multi-billion-dollar international business.
ए पहाड़ नेबा पाई बोले ए पत्थर सब नेबा पाई से एको पानी चांचे दोनो संपत्ति अछि से काइना पिना सब अछि इटी पत्थर नेले आमे केमति ग्रो बचु पत्थर तिले का आमे को पिला जिले का आमे बचि पारबु डंगर पहाड़ सब बचि पारबु वर्षा आसबो से पवन आसबो शीत आसबो सब चाषबास हेबो ए पत्थर सब को पानी नेले आमे मरि जीवु.
Kumti Majhi is an elder of the Kondh. He has lived his whole life in the Niyamgiri.
आमर तीन पेड़ है ना आमर अजा आमर बाफा तापरे आमे.
In 2003, Kumti realized that his god, Niyamgiri, was in trouble.
आमके सपन भी देला ई जो बाहर जो सरकार बाहर को पानी जेते बेले सरकार बिकला के बाहर को पानी जेते बेले आसी करे इते आक्रमण कला के ई पहाड़टा देया हेबो नै से फास्ट रो आमे माटी पूजा जो दिन हैला से दिन उठो आमे ई आरंभ को ई आंदोलन भी आरंभ करिचु सेति लागि सेनु आमके सपन भी देला जे नियमगिरी ए बोलिया मते विपदटा आसुची तारपरे कान करबो ई पूजाटा भी आरंभ करलु समस्ते भी चेतना हेलु मां के जनता करी आमे रखबा आमर लड़ाई करी करे आमे आमर जीवन आगे जीवा सेना किंतु मार जीवन जीवानी.
The Kondh mobilized in defense of their ancestral home, often forming human chains of protest, kilometers long. But it quickly became clear their demonstrations were in vain. Within months of the 2003 agreement, Vedanta and the government of Orissa began work on the first stage of the mining project. This $1 billion alumina refinery, in Lanjigarh, on the margins of the Kondh's ancestral lands. In the process, over 100 households were displaced, in some cases by force, the Khond allege, and brought here to a community purpose-built by Vedanta.
नहीं आम गाँ तो छाड़ी कर नहीं जाऊ बोली कोई बहुत कांडा है अता भी डॉलर गुंडा बने लाई करे से तो जबरदस्ती रे सेटा पुलिस लाई करे से मन के उठे बार व्यवस्था कले बोली जो राती राती केते लोग आम घर छाड़ी कर गाँ छाड़ी कर नहीं जाऊ बोली करी जेते बेले कहला के जबरदस्ती राती राती बुल्ली जोर लोगे कर घर मने भंगा
The refinery for which the villagers were displaced is designed to turn the bauxite found under the Niyamgiri into aluminium, the fine white oxide of aluminium required for smelting the metal. The Khond and their lawyers say its construction is illegal. Under Indian law, access to the bauxite reserves of the Niyamgiri should have been approved before building of the refinery began.
The law is very clear in respect of this, where the Forest Conservation Act and the guidelines which have been issued, under it says that if a project involves forest land as well as non-forest land, you see there can be projects which involve forest as well as non-forest. Work should not start in the non-forest area also till you get approval for the forest land.
It's a charge Vedanta's chief operating officer in India strongly rejects.
Every industry, if you see, some pre-project activities like survey is done, baseline data collection is done. Most of the project has started only in 2004, towards end of 2004, I can say.
So before 2004, is it fair to say that there was no construction activity?
No, nothing was going on.
But Vedanta's own records show construction began even before approval for the refinery site itself had been granted.
They got their environment clearance towards the end of 2004. And in fact, they had started work in 2003 itself, because that has been disclosed in their audited accounts.
Bishwajit Mohanty is an environmentalist with a long association with the Niyamgiri and the Kondh.
I was the first petitioner in the Vedanta case on 6th of November 2004.
In response to petitions by Bishwajit Mohanty and others, India's Supreme Court asked its Central Empowered Committee, or the CEC, to investigate the tangle of claim and counterclaim surrounding construction of the refinery and the related proposal to mine the Niyamgiri hills. The CEC recommended that the environment clearance granted for the refinery should be revoked, saying the use of the forest land in an ecologically sensitive area like the Niyamgiri hills should not be permitted. The casual approach, the lackadaisical manner, and the haste with which the entire issue of forest and environmental clearance for the alumina refinery project has been dealt with smacks of undue favor, leniency, and does not inspire confidence with regard to the willingness and resolve of both the state government and the Ministry of Environment and Forests to deal with such matters.
The maker of the law turns into the breaker of the law because he's always looking for loopholes on how to exploit. So we don't have a good land use policy in this country. We can end up giving a mining license or a prospecting license even within a protected area.
Valmik Thapar is a lifelong campaigner for Indian environmental causes. He served on the CEC when it was investigating Niyamgiri.
I still believe the Ministry of Environment and Forests in India requires urgent reform. To me, it's not serving the purpose of the environment, the purpose of the forests. It's still a clearinghouse for permissions. It still deals with projects which are fait accompli, where a factory is created without the clearance for the raw material. So because you've spent 50 crores creating a factory, you put pressure on the government to give you a license to mine or get the raw material to feed that factory. This is not how you can save India's environment.
And neither the clear objections of the Indian Supreme Court's own expert committee, the Kondh's protest, nor those of environmentalists had any effect on Vedanta. Construction work on the refinery went on, and the company continued to maintain that the Niyamgiri's fragile ecosystem would be unaffected by its mining plans.
There will not be any damage to the hill. Only localized pockets of bauxites are there where we will be taking out the bauxite. If you see from the outside it will appear as the same hill.
In the face of such reasoning, Kumti Majhi, the elder whose dreams had first raised the alert on Vedanta's plans, decided to leave the Niyamgiri for the first time in his life and head to India's capital, Delhi.
হোটুরে যে খাদ্য আর বটাটিকা যেন বাসনা শহর জায়গারে এটা মানে আমাকে পছন্দ নাই।
Despite his disdain for the capital, Kumti and his companions met decision makers and lawyers all over Delhi seeking support.
ବହୁତ ଜାଗାକେ ଆମେ ବୁଲି କରି ମଧ୍ୟ ନିୟମଗିରି ବିଷୟରେ ଏଇଟା ଜଣେଇଛୁ।
At the same time, international NGOs like Survival International and ActionAid also sought to draw attention to the Kondh's campaign.
Kumti is an incredibly passionate individual, and why wouldn't he be? Kumti is facing the loss of his sacred space. He's facing the loss of perhaps even his way of life.
Meredith Alexander works for ActionAid, a London-based NGO, which took an unusual approach to raise awareness on behalf of the Kondh, releasing this image in English newspapers.
Everyone knows the St. Paul Dome in London. It's a key part of the skyline. And so we wanted people to really understand what it would be like to have such an important location destroyed for a mine. So what we did was we applied to the London City Council to demolish the cathedral and dig a mine underneath it.
In 2007, ActionAid went further, buying shares in Vedanta on the Kondh's behalf to give them access to the company's annual general meeting in London. It was time for Kumti to travel again.
London ଯିବା ସେ ଉଡ଼ାଜାହାଜରେ ବସିକରି ଯେନ୍ ଗଲି ଯିବା ଗଲି ଯେ ଉଡ଼ାଜାହାଜ ବସବାଟା ଟିକେ ଉପରେ ଉଡ଼ବାଟା ଟିକେ କେବେ ନାଇଁ ବସଲା ସେଟା ଟିକେ ଗୋଟେ ଶାନ୍ତି ମିଳିଲା କିନ୍ତୁ ଓହ୍ଲେଇଲା ପରେ ସେଠି ଯେଉଁ ବଲିଆ ଦେଶ ମାଟିକୁ ଆଡ଼େ ଦେଖିଲେ ବି ମାଟି ନାହିଁ କି ଜଙ୍ଗଲ ନାହିଁ ପାହାଡ଼ ନାହିଁ କିଛି ନାହିଁ ତାଙ୍କର ଘର ମାନେ ଦେଖିଲେ ଟିକେ ବଡ଼ ବଡ଼ ବିଲ୍ଡିଂ ଘର।
In the meeting, Kumti stood up to ask a question of the chairman, and the way he phrased it and the strength and the power behind his concern really stood out, not just to the chairman, but to the other shareholders. And we found that actually, not just Kumti, but other people in the room started to ask questions about this mine in Orissa.
The chairperson of Vedanta is Anil Agarwal, a self-made multi-billionaire who started as a scrap metal collector in Mumbai. He presided over the meeting.
Mar ere pod budget ta ke tu brusto korba lagaichi tote dekbi enta koila heti lagi moi koili je mote dek tu kebe dekhi notibu tor desh kaichi dek tote bi dekhba lagi Niyamgiri ochon.
Following Kumti's appearance at the AGM, an Edinburgh-based fund got rid of almost $3.5 million in Vedanta shares. Norway's National Bank also shed $13 million worth of Vedanta shares following its own investigation into Vedanta's projects in India, including the Niyamgiri proposal. The bank's report stated, the allegations leveled at the company regarding environmental damage and complicity in human rights violations, including abuse and forced eviction of tribal peoples, are well-founded. The company seems to be lacking the interest and will to do anything about the severe and lasting damage that its activities inflict on people and the environment.
If you see from the Norway government side, it was not only on the human right issues, so they have raised so many issues. In this part, when we have set up this refinery, not even a single case has been lodged against Vedanta for any human right violation.
So as the Norwegian government official has put, there are no unethical practices, no human rights violations, and nothing you can say on record so far?
Let me tell you one thing. Some people believe why we have given the name Vedanta. And people must know, once people are using the name Vedanta, Vedanta is not a name. Vedanta is a philosophy for joining all religion together. Vedanta is a philosophy for creating all people together. Vedanta is a wave for ensuring development of the area as well as development of the nations.
We invited Vedanta's head office to provide further comment. They provided this statement. Vedanta absolutely denies any allegations of forcible or unlawful eviction. We have worked with the state authorities, local NGOs, and the communities in the area to ensure that our activities are conducted as sensitively as possible. The project has introduced provision of healthcare and educational facilities where previously little or none existed, and generated much needed economic investment and employment. We are determined to ensure that the project benefits all of its stakeholders. Late that same year, the Indian Supreme Court appeared to rule against Vedanta and its joint venture with the government of Orissa. But extraordinarily, in the same judgment, the court invited a firm called Sterlite Industries, or SIIL, to resubmit the mining proposal within 8 weeks. Sterlite Industries is a subsidiary of Vedanta. In fact, its own website describes it as the principal subsidiary of the Vedanta Resources Group. The Supreme Court also gave Sterlite very clear guidance as to what would be needed for the application to succeed. Only one of these conditions referred to the Kondh's interests, namely that 5% of the project's profits be reinvested back into conservation and tribal development. In August 2008, the Supreme Court approved the Sterlite's proposal to mine the Niyamgiri Hills, only subject to a further environmental clearance, which was granted in May. The recommendations of its own Central Empowered Committee seem to count for nothing.
Here the irony is that Central Empowered Committee is a baby of the Supreme Court. So that is something which is a matter for us, which left us pondering that why did the Supreme Court ignore this report given by its own body, which is very qualified, which has got absolutely independent and impartial experts working there.
I think that anyone who sets up an infrastructure for a mining operation or a river valley project or a big industry knows that he can find a path to getting permission, because the rationale for giving permission is India is an emerging economy, it's growing at whatever 7% or 6%, and development is the need of the day. This is how every politician talks: generate more money, give more jobs. But this to me is brainless chatter. This must end, because there has to be something more important than just development.
Looking into all the positions and what development has taken place in last 60 years, that's why they have taken a decision. Yes, Supreme Court cannot keep the eyes closed, and we cannot say that these people should continue to live like this, what they were living 100 years back. They also have right to live a better life.
विकास बोले काना विकास गाड़ी मोटर उड़ाजाहाज बसले विकास हाँ आमके सेटा दरकार नहीं.
Following its victory in the bid to mine the Niyamgiri, Vedanta has now applied to extend its refinery site 6-fold. So does this mean that the fight to save the Niyamgiri Hills is over and that the Kondh have lost their sacred lands? It seems not.
Vedanta amaro Niyamgiri pahad सुइबो का दरकार नहीं. आमर बैंक गले भी मुंडो गले भी मुचाड़े बने से पारले सरी आमे पारले.
सुप्रीम कोर्ट देले कि पार्लियामेंट देले भी से फाय नहीं. आमे लड़े जो चली ची आर अवधि आग को बढ़वा. तांके मरबे आमे भी मरबू. खाली आमे तो मारबू बोल बटन नहीं. तांके भी मरबे आमे भी मरबू.
पर्वतो आखि पवित्र होइला रे मोहरो.
For Vedanta, the fight may be over, but for the Kondh, the fight has just begun.
Well, that was the situation until a few weeks ago. So how did the Kondh people respond to the news that the Indian government had ruled against Vedanta's plans? Earlier, we reached Kumti Maji by phone at his home in the Niyamgiri Hills.
बाहर लगी जेन लड़ेटा आमे जेन जितलु इटा प्रकृति हमर भगवान नष्ट हेबा जाउतिला सेति लागि हमर जीवन जीविका नष्ट हेउतिला हमर भगवान नष्ट हेउतिला सेति लागि आमे लड़ेटा रे जितलु हमर परंपरा हमर दादी अजा तारु जेन परंपरा जेन जिनिसटा इटा भ्रष्ट हेउतिला नष्ट हेउतिला सेति लागि आमे इटा जितलु सेति लागि आमे गुटे आजि खुशी रे से जिनिसटा भाबुत.
Kumti Maji there. But were those celebrations a little premature? I'm joined now from Delhi by Mukesh Kumar, Vedanta's Chief Operating Officer in India, and here in the studio by Dr. Joe Woodman of Survival International. Thank you both for joining me. Dr. Kumar, let me come to you first. India's Environment Minister Jairam Ramesh has stated that Vedanta, your company, has shown what he says a blatant and shocking disregard for the human rights of the tribal people, and that you've also been involved in serious violations of environmental protection laws. What do you say to that?
Let me very clarify one thing, that regarding this mines does not belong to Vedanta. Mine belong to Orissa Mining Corporation, and no activity of whatsoever nature has been started at the mine site. And when there is no activity, so I don't know where is the question of any environmental violation or any human right violation.
Dr. Woodman, do you agree with that?
I do not agree with that, no. I think now the evidence against Vedanta is incredibly strong. First of all, Survival wrote to the British government, because Vedanta is a British company. We wrote to the British government and asked them to investigate. They were very concerned by what they found and asked for essential changes to Vedanta's behaviour. Following that, there's been reports by two different bodies for the Ministry of Environment and Forests in India. They've all categorically found that Vedanta has breached certain guidelines, and one of the final decision is that they have shown total contempt for the law, and particularly they have shown blatant disregard for the rights of the Khond tribal people specifically.
Dr. Kumar, what do you say to that?
As far as the Khond is concerned, they are located in the mines area, but wherever mines is there is not even a single Dongria people there living. The site where mining is proposed is totally barren type of land where no habitation is there. And as I told in the beginning, till date no activity has been started there.
Okay, let me ask you now, the question what's next for your company there now? Will you now leave the Niyamgiri Hills well alone?
No. No, this is up to the government of Orissa, because as I told, mine does not belong to us. It is Orissa Mining Corporation, and they have to take a decision what next they want on this Niyamgiri decision.
So, Dr. Goodman, are the Khond people safe now? Is the Niyamgiri Hill safe? Because it doesn't sound like it.
We hope so, but as you say, it's not clear, and this lack of clarity is obviously a concern to us and to the Khond people. I think, though, that the mountain of evidence against the damage that this would cause to the Khond, the disregard for the law that Vedanta has shown, I think all of this paints a picture that would mean that if now mining was cleared for the Niyamgiri Hills, it would be a great shock to everybody, and it would be very hard to see how that could be done legally.
I suppose, Dr. Kumar, what's astonishing for many people is why it is you've pressed ahead so adamantly with this project, despite the incredible global opposition that you got.
We take care for our community wherever we are operating, and we give highest regard to the community. And if somebody comes to the tribal area, that Khond area, this is one of the most backward and underdeveloped area. And in the last 5 to 6 years, what Vedanta has done there, in support with the government, it is visible to everyone. We have brought thousands and thousands of tribal to the mainstream.
Joe, this in many ways is a landmark case. Do you think it will have much impact on similar campaigns going on elsewhere in the world?
Absolutely, I think so. I mean, it is a wonderful victory for the Khond, but it isn't their victory alone. I think this is going to be very inspiring for people all around the world. This is also a wonderful moment where the governments have said we are going to put tribal rights first before corporate interests, and where shareholders have said we will not take this from companies. Companies must abide by by human rights standards and environmental standards, and we're going to make sure that they do.
On that note, Joe Woodman and Mukesh Kumar, thank you both for joining me. That's it for this edition. If you'd like to comment on this story or any of our programmes, we'd love to hear from you on the usual address, aljazeera.net/English. Until next time, bye-bye.